Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit for Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, coming to you from the Daily Detroit studio at Techtown. I am Jer Stay, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. And today, as we do often on Tuesdays, it is Mr. Fletcher Sharpe across the table from me. How are you, sir?
It's trying to live in this continually freezing and then all of a sudden optimal weather state is kind of hard on my body, but, I'm an adult. I'll push through.
I feel like the middle is gone. It's just cold or hot.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like 50 for like the rest of the week just about, and then Friday is going to be like 29, 30, and then it's going to go back up to 50. So,
all right, let's get into three stories on sports today. We're going to talk a little Juwan Howard. Is he on the hot seat? We're going to talk about a signing by the Lions from the CFL, which is near and dear to my heart, as I am actually a Canadian Football League fan. And the Pistons, what's next now that we're on the other side of the All-Star break? Let's start with Juwan Howard. Fletcher Sharpe, do you really think he's in any kind of danger? Because I got this thing, man. Like, whether it was Harbaugh before he found success or anything else, I do believe that Michigan has a preference for the Michigan man and keeping people around and letting things play out. Even with the trash season, I think this is the first time since the 1960s that Michigan basketball is in the basement. And I don't know, man. Like, I feel like Michigan holds on to people.
as someone who wrote an article a few years ago at the behest of someone else who was like, yeah, Michigan basketball is back, Michigan football is finished, and you fast forward to now, and it's like,
That was, you got some heat for that one. That was, to be clear, that was, you did that piece for Hour.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't all me missing, but my name's attached. So, like, yeah, by that logic, I missed. I do think he's on the hot seat now. It's not just the losses. Even now, he still has a Big Ten conference record at 49-43, so above 500, just barely. But, like, it's some of the losses they've had are, like, have not been great. They've been sorely outplayed. I know against Michigan State, the first time they got smacked around. The most recent game, they kind of held on a little bit, but still ended up losing in the end. Against Illinois, they just got steamrolled. Against Nebraska, they got steamrolled. They had a nice win against Wisconsin. The teams that they're losing to, that they should lose to, they're getting flattened by. The team they should be being competitive with, they're still finding a way to lose.
It's my opinion that the team has gotten progressively worse since Beeline left. I don't think that he's got the juice, but on the other hand, he has had so many controversies, so much stuff where you're like, would he get fired for that? Or maybe another program he would have been. I would argue in many other programs, some of the stuff that went down, he would have gotten fired for, especially without a winning record. And he's still there. So, like, do they care about performance like that?
I think they do, to a degree. I think they'll look past some things if you can win. I do think the most damning thing for him is that when your son comes to play under you and then after a year declares to go to the NBA, that's when it's like, ooh, even your kid who's going to be the star of the team is like, I don't want to be here. To me, that would be startling. I think that was probably the beginning of the end for him. I think he'll probably get this year plus maybe a little bit of the following year, but I don't really see him continuing to coach much longer. And to your point, part of the reason why they've gotten a bit worse since Beeline has been who they've brought in. And I'm not going to put that entirely on the kids because you might get someone who's a 5-star and then they get there and you realize they're a 5-star because they were playing in like Idaho or something and there really wasn't any other competition there. But some of the kids they got were being used improperly. Some of the kids they got should not have been rated as highly as they were. Some of it is the coaching. There seems to be moments where his rotations are not great in terms of getting players in and getting players out. And of course, the style Beeline coaches with is perfect for college basketball because he holds you accountable as a college athlete, not to say that Juwan Howard does not, but the way that he does it, like, makes players stay in check. And it's the reason why when he went to go coach the Cavaliers, it did not work at all because he was trying to treat them like they were college kids. And they're like, yo, I have more money than you. Don't talk to me like that, essentially, which is why Beeline didn't coach the Cavaliers anymore. But that really works in college, and maybe not even so much now that NIL deals are a thing where you might be like, do this. And he's like, I'm getting paid by cream cheese to do this. I'm not. No. But I do think that the noises are becoming loud for Juwan. I know especially after this last game with Michigan State. Where
that was wild.
Where the Chrysler Arena at some, like, I was watching online and I was watching, streaming from Sling to my TV. And I remember Malik Hall hit a jump shot. And, like, the stadium got loud. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I know Ann Arbor and East Lansing are not that far away from each other, but, like, never really heard an audible cheer like that when a Michigan State player scores away. And afterwards, John Neo posted a video that was like, you could very loudly hear the go green, go white chants happening through Chrysler Arena. I have had friends that play for Michigan's basketball team. I've been able to go there and see, some games right from the lower level. In my entire life, I've never experienced hearing that. And I know part of that is because the team's bad. Part of that's because Juwan's not doing, but that happening on
in Ann Arbor
on your tenure, that makes people, because again, I know the rivalry is really more football based. Most of the Big Ten rivalries are more football based, but they carry over. And my memory of Michigan State rivalries, even whether it was football or basketball or water polo or volleyball or tennis, you want to beat that team. You want to beat them. And there was a moment during the game where Jaden Akins went up for a layup and Llewellyn from Michigan was underneath him and Akins fell on his own back. And Llewellyn went to go check to see if he was okay. And that's good sportsmanship. Don't get me wrong. But in a rivalry game, it's kind of what are you doing? He's not broken in half. So why are you checking? Well, what's going on? And I feel I don't know, to see that in a rivalry moment that's happening on your tenure while your home stadium is cheering for the opposing team, I think it doesn't really spell very great moments for you coming up.
How much of that though is generational, right? Because Gen Z does things differently than the past. And even in the last 10 years, it's something where maybe that rivalry just isn't as instilled anymore.
I would then point to the football teams when someone got, hit. And I know football is a bit more violent than basketball. But when someone got hit on the opposing team's sideline, the entire sideline jeered at them as opposed to seeing if he was okay. It wasn't is he all right? It was you got laid out, type of thing. So and they're the same generation of people. So I understand maybe it's a bit different, but I've watched some recent rivalry games in the SEC for basketball and other things. I mean, heck, even in women's basketball, I've seen some fights break out between some conference rivals. So the fact that this heated rivalry between these two teams, and you got a home stadium cheering for the opposing team, and you got players checking on it's kind of well, this is happening on your tenure. Maybe you should distance yourself before they get rid of you.
Okay, so what are your odds that Juwan Howard is coaching the first game of next season?
60%. I think he probably will be back for next year. I don't know if he finishes the year, though. I think they'll
depending on record.
If he can find a way to get them into some postseason play, I think they'll keep him around. But I think they'll be if you don't turn this around, we got to let you go. I think he gets maybe part of the way through conference play next year. If not then he's gone in the offseason. But I think they'll bring him back and be you got to get this going. We'll see how the recruiting class goes. If he gets a nice 5-star group, maybe. If he doesn't, then it's curtains for him.
So it's not so often we get to talk about my secret passion, which is the Canadian Football League. Go Tiger Cats. But we get to mention it because Matthew Betts, listed as the most outstanding defensive player for the CFL, is moving Lions from the BC Lions, that's British Columbia, if you don't know, to Detroit. I'm excited because, look, CFL is kind of fun to watch. It's only because I have a Canadian dad that I got a little bit into it. But Fletcher, how is this going to translate to NFL play, and is this a good pickup for Detroit?
We'll see. Canadian football is a bit of a different beast. They only have 3 downs. Receivers are one of them's in motion the entire time. I was a bit of an Argos fan just because they're the closest team. And then I kind of stopped because I don't know. But nonetheless, I think he can help. The thing that makes me a little bit uncomfortable with Betts is he had a chance for a practice squad in 2019 for the Chicago Bears and did not make the team. He's 28, which not to say that age necessarily matters, but if it was a younger player trying to come in with something to prove, probably still has something to prove. I would be all right, this is someone who might make the team. As it stands right now, I'm not necessarily sure, but I do know some players come into professional leagues in the U.S., don't break in initially, go away, and then come back, and all of a sudden they've become more able to handle the stress of playing. After going to the Bears and getting cut, he went then to Edmonton Eskimos, now Edmonton Elks, before going to the BC Lions for the past year, and registering 18 sacks, which is the most for a Canadian-born player in the league, which is great. The Lions have a deficiency on the edge rush. They have Aiden Hutchinson, who's great, but they had a revolving door of people to help on the other side. So to get someone who potentially could add, I'm not going to say 18 sacks, but can potentially add, a fair amount of number on the other side, to at least give some pressure to help take it off of Aiden, will be great. If you have pass rush, it'll help kind of mask how bad your defensive back play is. You can't have a soft pass rush and have terrible defensive backs. Like, that's how you get carved up, and that's what happened with the Lions, unfortunately. But if they can add someone like Betts' skill set, if it can translate over just a little bit, just to make the team continue going forward, it'll be a great pickup. But then again, it is a pickup at the end of the NFL season. They still have training camp coming up, so we might not even see this guy potentially coming into the season. But if he continues to play the way that he played last season and carry that energy and carry the technique he has into this league, it could be one of the diamonds in the rough pickups.
We talked about this a little bit about Brad Holmes, and when he came out there and talked to people about, hey, it doesn't really matter as much if it's the first pick or the fourth pick or whatever. It's more about finding those fits, and it feels like this is exactly that kind of pickup where it's like, I see this guy, maybe I talk with this guy, and I think he'd be a good fit for the club.
I mean, the reason why that I'm leaning more towards like this potentially could work is really because of Brad Holmes. So far, everything he's done with the Lions, almost everything he's done with the Lions has worked out in a very good way. So if he sees a free agent who's like, ooh, we could benefit from having this guy around, I'm more prone to say, okay. If this is like after like a few rocky years, I'd say I'm not really sure. All the players you've drafted, most of them have made the roster, have made huge impacts on the season the past few years. If you think this free agent can come in and contribute and fit into the culture and potentially make the team and help, okay, that's fair. If you thought an Australian rules football player or a rugby player could come over and help as like a running back or something, normally that doesn't really pan out, but I'll give it a shot because Brad Holmes said so. And so far he hasn't been wrong, and he's earned the benefit of the doubt in situations like this.
I feel like, Matthew, although he's probably going to see a pretty big pay bump, this is not going to be the most expensive pickup either.
No, that's one of the perks that makes it a diamond in the rough is if you pick this player up and it works out, you can keep him for a year or two on a contract that's helpful for the team. If he has a breakout year, you can think about maybe you're going to pay him, maybe you're not, etc. And if it doesn't work out, you can cut him during training camp. And it's like, well, we took a swing, did not work. Oh, well, and go from there. So if this works out great, awesome. Welcome to the team. You'll have people singing "Oh Canada" when you make sacks, making jokes about poutine, etc. Or, we can say that this happened and it did not work out and we mentioned this guy and now we're moving forward.
Well, I hope that he is an A+ rusher. All right, we're on the other side of the All-Star break for the NBA. Maybe we take a minute and get the temperature of the Pistons. I know they're playing a little bit better, and I know that statistically they should, I hope, beat 10 games, and I should be wrong about that for 10 wins. How are you feeling? What are a couple of things we need to focus on in this last stretch?
Getting to 10 wins. They have 28 games left to do that. Maybe not necessarily the most favorable schedule.
They only need 3 to beat 10. 2 to tie, 3 to beat, as we're recording
Maybe not
this.
the most favorable schedule coming up, but I do know the Nets, who they play in March, just fired their coach. There's a chance to get a win there. They play the Hornets again, who have a better record, but the Pistons have beaten the Hornets twice already this season. Those are 2 games right there I think they could win. They play the Wizards again at the end of March, which should be a toilet bowl match. Maybe they can win that one. The Grizzlies, who are kind of having such a weird year themselves, and they close out the season with the Spurs. So they go to San Antonio, play against Wembanyama. Hopefully he doesn't have another triple-double because that was embarrassing. They're playing better. That's the thing that I can take from this. And I know a lot of people are like, who cares if they're playing better? They're not going to make the playoffs. Like, they should be going for draft picks. Not necessarily a wrong statement.
It's not like we have the best luck with that, though. Let's just be honest.
True. But when you have a young core, I just want to see them playing hard. Like, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses and say, oh, like that's... No, they're reaching a point of near this part of the year, like your young core of like rookies and whoever are no longer rookies. Like, they've played most of a year. I'm not going to say you're a veteran, but like you're no longer a rookie. You understand how the league works at this point. You want to see some growth. I'd like to see Asar Thompson like hit a jump shot or something, like actually score from outside the paint. I'd like to see Jaden Ivey continue his development, maybe get a few more better looking shots available. You want to see maybe Jalen Duren contribute more than just, a lot of rebounds on the defensive side, some putbacks. Maybe get him working a little bit of his post game going on. You want to see Cade stay healthy. Like, that's really it for him. You just want to see this core compete. You want to see what they have, because going forward, like, they have a few picks. They have a few players like Fontecchio, who's not necessarily young, but, isn't necessarily old either, who could contribute going forward, but also you just want to see them compete and just try. For me, especially in a city like Detroit, where like we get behind our teams that try hard and like show the grit and grime and whatever. Part of the reason why people love the Lions so much, besides the fact that they were good, is the fact you could tell they were like physically trying and literally doing everything they could to try. And I'm not going to infer that other professional teams are not trying, but like when you lose 26 games in a row, like some people might infer like you're not trying as hard as you should. So you want to see them just try. And I know that's like the very, very low bar, but at this point, you're not making the playoffs. You're on a track to having the best chances of getting the number 1 overall pick. You just want to see teams go out there and give effort. You don't want to see them go out there and say, all right, we're going to take the worst record. Let's put all these scrubs in here who can't do whatever and just let them lose. Because like that's not fun. And like that'll damage you going forward for the next season if people know that you'll just willingly tank to do whatever. You want to see Monty try some new things with some of these younger players. That's really it. You want to see that if he still knows how to coach. Because right now he's the highest paid in history with like one of the worst losing streaks in history. That's a terrible thing to have. I think if
next year is terrible or next year continues to be close to as bad, then we've got to start looking at that. I don't want to look at that. Fans don't want to look at that.
They start looking at that, like that's just going to cripple the team even further because you then have to pay this man to get him out of here. And the contract you gave him was so astoundingly dumb.
Straight up dumb.
It was a big risk. Like if it would have worked out, or even worked out a bit better, I could say it is. But the fact is, if he can't improve where he's going right now, looking back, it's dumb. It's like when the 49ers signed Jimmy Garoppolo and they're like, ooh, 7 years, $135 million. Like that seems smart. And then a year later, you're like, ooh, that seems stupid. And then it's like, now we traded him to the Raiders. Obviously it didn't work out and he's still getting all this money as a result. So like at the time, it seemed like it could be smart. It could be a very good thing going forward. Like when we signed Miguel Cabrera to like that long contract with the Tigers. At first, like it's kind of risky. Then it started paying off. And then all of a sudden he hit his peak and he started to decline. You're like, now it's stupid. It can change how it looks from that point. But if you sign a contract that long for that much money and you've managed 11, 12 wins going into the next year, like people are going to be kind of hesitant to be like, is this a good thing? Do we waste a bunch of money? Are we going to continue to win only 10, 12, 14, 8 games? Is this it for us? I think it was kind of foolhardy, and we'll see what happens going. I don't think they can fire him next year. I truly don't.
No.
That's a huge poison pill you have to swallow yourself, and it's not like a player where you could trade him away and have another team deal with it. Like, you have to deal with that one yourself. And while Tom Gores is, like, pretty ballsy in terms of trying type of guy, like, I don't think he can admit defeat like that and then just say, here's the rest of your contract, please leave.
2 Pistons-related things I wanted to mention. One, I was listening to an interview last week, and I did not realize this, but Joe Dumars is working for the NBA now. I did not realize that Joe was actually the head of basketball operations for the league now.
Yeah, when Draymond got in trouble for all of his antics and he's supposed to be suspended, they had Joe Dumars comment on it, and I was like, that's wild because, like, I know before people were blaming him for the Pistons falling apart, and even as bad of a team as he constructed at times, it was nothing like this. Like, people gave him heck for missing out on Darko, for missing out on LeBron or Carmelo or Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh for getting Darko instead. That got them a championship, though. And, like, I'm always like, I'll take Darko and a championship over one of those other players and, like, whatever might happen after that. People gave him hell about that, but, like, he got a ring out of it. We'll see what happens going forward, but taking Killian over a player like Tyrese Halliburton right now is looking very similar in terms of, like, how bad it is. Only difference is the Pistons are not going to get a championship out of it as Killian Hayes was released.
Staying in the vein of history, the last point I want to make, the Detroit Historical Museum has a new exhibit going about the Pistons. It's called 3520, and it's about the 35th anniversary of the 1989 Bad Boys and the 2004 Go Into Work Pistons. Fletcher, I think this is something we're going to have to check out.
Oh, for sure, especially now that it's going to include potential Hall of Fame inductee Chauncey Billups. So, yeah, I was already interested to see that, but hearing the news that Chauncey is on the finalist for being a Hall of Fame player, like, I for sure want to stop in. Also have to mention his daughter and my sister were in the same ballet class when they played for the Pistons.
You know what? Detroit is the biggest small town you'll ever meet, 100%. All right, Fletcher Sharpe, so good to talk to you. Saint FDW on all the social media. Next week, same place, same channel.
Of course, and hopefully we have much happier Pistons news and other sports to bring to you.
With that, I am Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharpe.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our members, patreon.com/dailydetroit, who keep this thing going. As always, feedback, dailydetroit@gmail.com, or leave a voicemail, 313-789-3211. Thank you so much for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.